Good evening and welcome everybody. For those at the back, just give us a couple of minutes more. We're just arranging for the chairs. They should be here shortly. Welcome everybody. My name is Rachna Tehliani. I head Columbia's Global Center in Mumbai. Thank you for joining us today. The Global Center has been around since 2010 and we are a research, education and knowledge hub which is trying to catalyze solutions to India's pressing challenges in the areas of business, environment sustainability, education and health. Today's conversation is part of our AI Rising series, a dedicated strand of programming through which the Center is convening leaders across industry and academia on opportunities and risks that AI presents for India. We believe that these dialogues matter and we are grateful for you for showing up for them. Which brings me to today's program. We're delighted to host the India Forum presented by Columbia Business School's Jerome Chazen Institute on Can AI Go from Risky Gamble to Winning Game Changer. We'll hear from world-class researchers and practitioners and close with a live debate that I think will spark some genuinely useful disagreement. Before I hand things over, a quick note. We would love for you to stay for dinner after the evening and continue the conversation in a more informal setting. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Professor Olivier Toubia. She is the Mayer Feilberg Professor of Business and former Vice Dean of Faculty, Research and DEI at Columbia Business School. One of the most distinguished marketing scholars of her generation. Geeta's research explores the psychology of consumer identity, brands, and media. And she has spent the past several years thinking deeply about what AI means for consumers, for business, and for society at large. She is the perfect guide for the questions we'll be wrestling with tonight. Please join me in welcoming Professor Geeta.
Thank you, Rachna. Those really kind remarks. At the rate that AI is moving, I find it hard to keep in touch, so hopefully I'm still the right person for this debate. Things are moving so fast. So first of all, thank you everyone for joining us at this 4th Columbia Business School and Chazen Institute 2026 Mumbai Forum. And the topic, of course, is AI. Now, this is a parallel to the India AI Summit in Delhi that's running all of this week with the theme of welfare for all, happiness for all. And the aspirations are for this transformational technology to be an engine for advancing human civilization and for inclusive growth. But the reality on the ground is that technological developments are moving fast, and just as we've seen a digital divide, we may yet see an AI divide where essentially the rich get richer and the rest of us pick up the pieces. In this context, I read with admiration Mr. Nitin Paranjpe, the chairman of Hindustan Unilever's address on artificial intelligence for Aam Aadmi. He said, artificial intelligence today has become much more than a technical issue. It's an economic issue, a social issue, a governance issue, and a moral issue. And it is by far the most defining conversation. In general, he emphasized that managing the AI transition in India is a social and economic imperative. So we'll address some of these issues in the upcoming debate that I'll introduce later today. But first we have an exciting keynote address from my friend and colleague, Professor Olivier Toubia. And that will be followed by Q&A moderated by Rajesh Jain. Let me start by introducing Olivier. So Olivier is the Glaubinger Professor of Business at Columbia Business School. He got his PhD in marketing from MIT in 2004 and has been at Columbia Business School since then. He's a leading researcher in the area of computational social science, meaning he combines methods from social science and data science in order to study human processes such as motivation, choice, and creativity. He is a superstar scholar and teacher who's been recognized by the university and academia for his many research and teaching contributions in the area of customer insights and innovation. As an aside, I believe he also knows the lyrics to many of Ariana Grande's songs. You can test him on that later. And he also has a mini vegetable garden in his office. In the past couple of years, Olivier has led Columbia's AI push in terms of both teaching and research. In teaching, he's developed and launched the popular MBA course Gen AI for Business. And the course description puts this very well and states, in order to use Gen AI tools productively and responsibly, it is important to understand how these tools are built, which is the focus of the first module in the course, called Foundations of Gen AI, or the Roots. The second module analyzes current tools, and it's called the Trees, and the third module looks at the broader issue of managing Gen AI impact, and it's called the Forest. In terms of research, Olivier is a thought leader on the transformative power of AI, while also thinking broadly about responsible use of AI. He recently wrote a piece for HBR on the AI tools that are transforming marketing research, about how new AI technologies are reshaping the practice of market research. He wrote that generative AI, synthetic data, and automated insight generation platforms are accelerating the pace at which companies can test ideas, understand consumers, and refine products. He believes that while AI can dramatically enhance research efficiency, human judgment remains essential for asking the right questions, interpreting nuanced findings, and ensuring ethical and accurate use of data. Olivier has spearheaded Columbia's Digital Twins initiative, and he'll talk more about that and will share his latest research findings with us. Olivier's talk is titled Digital Twins, Accurate Reflection or Distorted View. Please join me in warmly welcoming Olivier to the podium and welcoming him to Mumbai on his first visit.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you for the warm welcome. So yeah, it's my pleasure to share with you some research which has been funded by the business school. It's a pretty ambitious project with about 25 different collaborators from throughout the business school, also computer science, some faculty, PhD students. So it's been pretty exciting. We started working on this about a couple of years ago, about a year and a half ago. And it's all about digital twins and basically seeing whether it's possible to create clones or twins of humans and to simulate how they would behave, how they would respond to different scenarios, and how they would interact with different stimuli. So by the way, we just launched at Columbia last month a Digital Twins Lab, which is a hub for research and resources on that space. We've already shared resources, and we've shown some of them for the community, for industry, for academia, to try to help the field advance and to try to understand a little bit the realm of applications of this technology, the limitations, and how we may be able to improve the efficacy of this very exciting technology. There's a lot of, the examples here are from the US. I'm not as familiar with what's happening here. In the US, there's a lot of talks about how the market research industry is being disrupted by AI. $140 billion a year. And we're seeing indeed a lot of new entrants, new companies, and established companies like Ipsos and other large consumer packaging companies, consulting companies, exploring the use of AI in their workflow. And one of the hot areas these days is the market research, marketing insights, being able to simulate how humans will respond to different scenarios, to be able to test products and ideas, possibly better, faster, and cheaper. There's currently, to my knowledge, 3 startups that have reached more than $500 million valuation in that space. Almost every week you hear of a new unicorn being created in that space. So definitely lots of exciting activities. And again, the idea is that maybe we can get enough information about consumers or group of consumers to be able to test concepts, generate ideas from their digital twins rather than from the real people. So if I can do a focus group with a synthetic version of customers that who are available 24/7, who never lie, who never cheat, who give me thoughtful answers.
Thank you.
And they're available at a fraction of the cost of regular consumers. And maybe they might give me even deeper insight. Then I may be able to basically shorten the cycles, and be able to be more efficient in innovation, customer insight, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the promise, that's the excitement. And we've seen a lot of, again, investment in that space. But we were trying to figure out whether it actually works. And there's not a lot of publicly available data to be able to validate the approach. So that's what we've been trying to do at Columbia, trying to be transparent and with an open source mindset to try to contribute knowledge and data for everyone to try for themselves. The first thing we did was we actually collected a pretty big data set with over 2,000 US consumers, to whom we asked over 500 questions each. So it was done over multiple weeks, multiple waves. And so we gave them a lot of questions that's going to span the entire traits that you would want to measure in someone, their demographics, also their psychographic, their cognitive abilities. We ran 17 different studies on them, tried to replicate some non-experiments. Some of them we did twice to be able to see how consistent they were with themselves and kind of use that as a benchmark. Because if the person themselves only responds 80% of the time the same answer if you ask them the same question twice, it's hard to expect the twins to predict more than 80% of the time if the person themselves are not consistent. So we collected this pretty massive data set and we made it available publicly. It's on Hugging Face. And it's been downloaded about 12,000 times now by companies and academics to get to test the different ways of creating twins based on those data. But the simplest way again is just to take an LLM, like GPT for example, and then feed to GPT the battery of questions from the person. So, okay, here's a person, here's the demographics, here's how they answered all these 500 different questions. Now predict how they would respond to this new question. So that's kind of the basic approach. So we tried that also in that first project, and we found some pretty encouraging results. We found that we're able to predict with some pretty good accuracy the answer of the humans based on if we hold out some questions and we train the twins based on the other questions, we're able to predict with pretty good accuracy the answers to the other question. But we found that we were not always able to replicate experimental results. So some well-known behavioral phenomena, in about only half of the cases we were able to replicate the findings from published research with those twins. So it was interesting, but there was need to do more testing. And so what we did then is actually did another round of 19 studies. So again, we have 23 co-authors on this project who together designed 19 new studies that range from politics to advertising, luxury consumption, privacy regulations, media consumption. It's a very wide range of topics. And we ran these 19 studies on the same 2,000 people, so going back to the same consumers who did the initial surveys. And then we asked the same questions to their twins. So we had for these 164 different measures, the answers from the human and the answer to the same question from their digital twins. So we're able to compare side by side exactly how you answered and how your twin answered across a wide range of domains. So that's kind of what we did in that bigger project. So I won't kind of go into too much of the detail of the result because I don't have too much time. But basically we found that it's very exciting. There's some interesting signals. But at the same time, if we think of twins as mirrors, the mirrors right now are a bit distorted. So given the data that we used and given the type of task that we tested, we find some key distortions. So we find that today, basically, if a company wants to use this technology, we really recommend doing a proof of concept with some clear measures, some clear benchmarks, to really be able to explore how well this technology would work in your situation before just deploying this without further testing. So it seems to be more like funhouse mirrors rather than accurate mirrors. So 5 of the key distortions that we highlighted. The first one is stereotyping. We find that the twins tend to behave more like the kind of stereotype on the demographics. So based on the age, gender, and political affiliations, for example, the twins tend to behave like the segment level stereotype and not always pick up on the individual nuance of each person's personality. So there's a bit of stereotyping and kind of giving answers answers that you would expect only based on demographics. Another one that we found is that the twins are not fully able to capture the whole range of behaviors in the population. Their answers are more homogeneous than the humans, so there's less variance in their answers, and they tend to kind of shrink towards the average, if you want, instead of really being able to fully represent the full range of opinions in the population. We also found that some group of customers, some group of individuals, their twins tend to be more accurate than for other groups. So people with higher education, higher income, have twins that tend to be more accurate than people with lower education and lower income. People who have more extreme views politically also tend to be less well captured by their twins. So we find some representation bias. Certain groups might not be as well captured than others by their twins. We also find the twins to actually show sometimes ideological biases. So in our data, we find that the twins, using GPT as the base model, tend to be pro-technology. They tend to think that technology is our friend, that we should embrace technology, more so than their human counterparts. They also tend to be very pro-human. They tend to think that we should trust people, we should help people, everyone is nice, more so than the actual humans. And when you force them to choose a little bit between humans and technology, they tend to prefer technology over humans. They tend to actually have preference for technology over humans. For example, when they write ideas, they tend to think that ideas from humans are worse than ideas from AI. And then finally, we also find that the twins tend to be hyper-rational. They tend to know everything. They tend to have more cognitive resources than their human counterparts. So when you're trying to test behavior that kind of captures people's limited intelligence or limited knowledge, the twins might not be able to capture those imperfections at this point. So these are just some areas that we've identified that require a little bit more work. That's we as a field of practitioners and academics need to figure out exactly how to improve those twins to actually better represent the actual behavior of the humans. So how are we doing this? Well, one of the things we can do is try to get better input data. So instead of having surveys, maybe we can have interviews, and we can use AI to moderate those interviews. That's what some of you tried as a preparation for today. Actually, we have Naman Jain here, who's an entrepreneur, who's standing there. He's the founder of Twinloop, which is the platform that some of you use to actually conduct an AI moderated interview, in which you just talk with an AI in a free way, and we use that to capture information about you, which might be actually more effective than a survey, which is kind of boring and you have to go through questions one by one. So actually, Naman is working with us now on trying to test this AI moderation approach. We can also try to use behavioral data. So I'm right now working with a large bank, which is trying to capture twins for 10 million customers in Mexico using their transactional data. So using not just surveys, but actual behavioral transactional data, and maybe we'll be able to better capture the twins this way. We can also try to maybe improve the way we leverage the base LLM that we use to create the twins. And I think we should also try to really think carefully about how we should think about twins. Are those meant to be a real replica of humans, or are they meant to be kind of advisors who know the person very well, but who still behave in more rational ways, and kind of superhumans, if you want, that are going to be able to help users, but not necessarily capture their individual behavior. And so with that in mind, I think we can think of many interesting use cases for these twins. So definitely we have the market research as the first use case, but it's possible to actually talk to your own twin. So actually some of you were able to do that today. I think we've had some technical issues with the second part of the survey that we designed. We'll leave it, I think there's some firewall issues that are blocking some of you to participate, but we'll leave the link up if you want to try to talk to your own twin. And so what happens now when you have a mirror, which might be a distorted mirror, but it's still a mirror that is going to talk back to you. So what's the process that's going to, what applications can we think along these lines? We can also think of what we call counterfactual twins. So maybe I'm going to take you and then I'm going to make a more liberal version of you or more conservative, and I'm going to let you talk to that kind of modified version of you, and maybe that's going to help you understand yourself better, take someone else's point of view, maybe that's going to reduce polarization. So we're looking at some of these applications as well. You can also maybe create an agent who's going to actually go and act on your behalf as your twin. And we have colleagues who actually create faces for our twins. So this is what twin ID 1305 should look like, given her personality. So it's a synthetic image of the face that would capture these 500 questions that the person answered. So now you have this agent who can just go out in the world, maybe date 1,000 other twins every day, and then come back to you at the end of the day. Like 5 people that you should really look into as the real person. So there's many interesting use cases like that once you create this kind of embodiment of these twins. And then also there's other applications of this that some of our colleagues are working on, in which maybe you can use the twins to judge AI systems. So maybe you create an advertisement, and then you have 1,000 twins who are going to evaluate the advertisement, and then the other agents are going to then improve the ads based on the feedback from the twins, and then the twins are going to give feedback again. So you have this feedback loop between different agents are going to be able to self-improve without requiring too much human intervention. So these are some of the applications that we are looking at. And so that's, if you want to download some of the papers here, the QR codes are here. Yeah, I think that's kind of what, at a high level what we've been working on in the past couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivier. Thank you so much. I'm sure you'll get a lot of questions. But we are very excited today to also have with us Rajesh Jain. So I'm going to introduce Rajesh, and Rajesh will make a brief presentation on a use case of digital twins in marketing, and then we'll have a conversation between Rajesh, Olivier, and the rest of us. So let me introduce Rajesh. Rajesh Jain is the founder of Netcore Cloud, a bootstrapped Proficon with $100 million ARR. Netcore's SaaS platform helps B2C brands globally with customer retention, engagement, personalization, and product discovery to maximize conversion revenues and profits. Rajesh has authored a book, Startup to Proficon, and in 2024, he was honored with the Distinguished Alumnus Award by the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, in recognition of his outstanding contributions to entrepreneurship. He writes daily on his blog, rajeshjain.com. You should check it out. Lots of interesting content that I've had a chance to look at recently. Rajesh did his BTech Electrical Engineering from IIT Bombay in 1988, followed by an MS from Columbia University in EE in 1989. He returned to India to begin his entrepreneurial journey in 1992. Rajesh will start by sharing his thoughts on the specific use case of digital twins, and then we'll have Rajesh and Olivier up here for a conversation and invite your questions. So let me please invite Rajesh to the stage, and let's give Rajesh a warm welcome.
Thanks a lot, Geeta, and wonderful presentation, Olivier. What I'm going to do in the next 5 minutes is give you an overview of how the twins can be used in marketing. We are all recipients of dozens of messages in all of our inboxes, WhatsApp, email, SMS, RCS, etc. And a lot of the messages are not very relevant. And what happens is that brands basically lose connects with us. We become inactive, dormant, churn, and then there's a high cost of reacquiring us, which basically goes to the ad tech platforms. So what if brands could essentially send us relevant information? So I just want to give you a simple example of how twins could transform brand customer interaction. The TWIN are acronyms, as you'll see. So a typical message that you would get: hey, coffee lover, check out our latest international brews. So not very helpful, but now if we can basically take in transactional data, so demographic, analytical data, actual transactions that we have done, and engagement data, so the DAT, that message can now become more personalized for us. Hey Ravi, your morning cappuccino and almond croissant waiting, tap before 9 a.m. to skip the queue. More inviting for us to possibly engage with. Next, sorry. Now bring in world data. This is the real-time context that we can bring in. What's the weather outside? You also bring in the category truth, which is there, which every category has some truths. Then you bring in the brand roots, comparative offers, etc. So a lot of other external data, so the vertical insights, the category insights, the brand truths which are there and so on. And the message can get further personalized. So rain's back in Nama, Bangalore, warm up with your cappuccino and almond croissant, 10% off before 9 a.m. This festive evening. Again, so the personalization becomes better and better. Next, how do we bring in the individual, the individual level data? What Olivier spoke about from the surveys which is there, the behavioral data, the transactional data, you can now bring all of that information that is there, either collected or inferred, to help further personalize. So many of these are affinities which marketing platforms, MarTech platforms actually have, which can let you then do a next level of personalization. So this is what you will get much more relevant. Again, the likelihood of us clicking on or engaging with that message improves dramatically. And then finally, we are different people in the day. So it's what we think of as nano moments. Okay, so n is equal to 0.1 rather than just the n is equal to 1 personalization. So morning, afternoon, weekends, we are different people. And now, you can actually make these messages even more personalized and relevant based on what time of day or weekday, weekend, what you are sending. Now what all this basically does, and this is work we are doing with Maithusi.ai, it's an incubator company of code. Essentially the idea is, how do you drive better personalization, better relevance based on the information that's there. The first party data which is collected, the external data, so multiple sources of data. Data can be also collected from ad tech platforms. What typically customers maybe spend 1% of a time with a brand, but 99% time is spent on other platforms. So Google, Meta, they can give you through their APIs relevant information on interests, on what people are searching for. Not at an individual level, but at a cohort level. So you can take that together as segment level information and help personalize. So if we can get, and that's the real goal of marketing, right? Right message, right person, right time, right channel. That improves retention dramatically. That helps brands maximize lifetime value from us. So this is, I think, one practical use case of how AI twins or digital twins could really transform the world of marketing. Back to you, Geeta.
Thank you, Rajesh. And I'd like to invite both Olivier and Rajesh to the stage. We will have a conversation between Rajesh and Olivier, and also I'd like to invite the questions. Maybe I can start with a question to both of you. Olivier, your digital twin is projecting who I am based on a few responses. And Rajesh, your digital twin is based on a lot of data. So how do I reconcile these two, and what do you think of when you think of digital twin? Maybe Olivier, you can start.
Yeah, so we tried to use as many survey data points as possible, so like over 500 questions. These are the standard tools that any use typically to survey people. And we found some interesting signals, but also some limitations. So definitely, it's a good idea to combine those with the transactional data, maybe like these nano moments, world data. And so I think different companies are trying to do that right now, integrating different data sources. And we're still trying to figure out which data sources will be most useful given the use case. So it's work in progress. So I think definitely trying to combine as many relevant data sources as possible to capture how this person would think or behave at that moment in that context.
So I think our approach, just building on what Olivier said, is how do you bring in more deterministic and observable data? And that really comes in from what people are doing elsewhere on the internet. That comes in from, say, social and search, the ad tech platforms, and also the marketing information that's there with the brand. okay, what's happening on what people are doing on the website, the push messages which are going out, etc. So I think the answer probably lies in, as Olivier said, bringing together multiple streams of data. And the way you have to think is that you will not be data rich for every customer. There will be the long tail where your data thin. But for your best customers, can you use the richness of data that's available to create much better experiences? Because that's where you can maximize the lifetime value of a customer.
In a country of 1.5 billion, do we really want digital twins? So let me open it up to the audience for questions.
Thank you for that presentation, Rajesh. My question is not so much a digital twin, but I want to know how to deal with the adversity. So if I can program this and traits, then I know how you would respond to a stimuli if I do something in future. Is that also possible?
Great question. See, I think, and this actually goes to the work that Olivier's team is doing, that if you can create your twin, and the question of predictability, etc., is always there. But I think today, you with the LLMs as they exist, I think can do a pretty good job in figuring out how to combat adversaries. I would worry for the adversary, Mojit.
Hi, my question is, we are looking at this digital twin by simulating the behavior of the consumer. And I guess the underlying assumption there is that the AI is just simply observing what the behavior of the consumer is. But I heard that you are a fan of Ariana Grande, and I know my daughter, for example, she does what Ariana Grande likes to do, or we know that many people like to follow Taylor Swift. So what I have been observing as a kind of layman observer is that the AI, instead of just being a silent observer, can influence the entire mass. So if you create a virtual Taylor Swift, for example, so you can basically tailor in the behavior of 10,000 consumers. And in that case, you don't need to simulate the individual behavior of the different consumers. So I mean, I see a risk there, and I also see a marketing gimmick, manipulation potential, whatever you like to call it, over there. What are your views on that?
To make sure I understand, you can create a twin of a celebrity who's going to influence something. There are actually companies in the US that are doing this. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think, has created a twin of himself. And you can create a twin and then have personalized messages for different customers. So if they want a personal trainer that's going to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger's twin and that's going to be giving me advice personally. So that is happening. There's regulations around this. It has to be with the consent of the celebrity, of course. Yeah, but that's a very good point about the using AI to influence rather than to stimulate. And definitely there's an ability, and this goes back to your point also, of having targeted messages at scale that are going to be possibly more persuasive than mass advertising. And that's definitely one of the implications we have to think about for like the society and business. Is that a good thing? Are you going to be able to still capture diverse ideas, or are you only to converge to a few kind of popular ideas and so on and so forth?
Just to build on that point, if you think at a country level, you can break up a country basically into about 1,000, what I call artificial people. Okay, so in fact, Axiom, Experian, the data brokers globally, for a very long time, last 20 years, they basically taken countries and created lists where there are 100 segments of people, and then they would sell these lists. Now, if you can think of 2 genders and maybe 7, 8 age groups, maybe 8, 10 income levels, maybe 4, 5 locations, you can actually take 1,000 personas. And instead of having static artificial people, and then you have sort of full representation, just building on, and you have, these are synthetic personas that you can talk to. Now in today's world, you can actually make them living. Each of these artificial people could be ingesting social media, ingest in Spotify, Netflix movies, etc., real-time influencer news. And what this does is I think it's going to completely transform the way we think of market research and marketing. Because now you can say the example that Olivier has showed, and say that, look, this person is more like AP, artificial person number 45. And now the marketing would be attuned to that person. So I think the biggest opportunity today globally, in my mind, is the fact that 70% of marketing budgets are spent on reacquiring existing customers, because brands lose connection with us. That's $500 billion opportunity globally. Not 10 times what market research is. And if that can be made more relevant, I think it's really transformative for brand profitability going forward. I think it's a very important area, so twins and so on.
I'll go back to the experiment which you have conducted. You have mentioned that there were 500 questions were answered in about 2 hours 45 minutes. So would there not be fatigue in the person answering questions and the credibility of answers going down? How will it affect your model?
Yes, so definitely. So we were worried about this. So we broke up the study into 4 different waves over a month. So each wave was about half an hour, 40 minutes. And we checked the data, the quality of the data, the test-retest accuracy, the response time, whether the pattern makes sense. And the human data, from what we can tell, is of good quality. So it's not just knowledge. Actually, people did pay attention and they put in the effort to actually answer these questions thoughtfully. So we think the data actually coming from the human is valuable. And the question is how can we use that data then to explore creating synthetic version of these humans.
It's all very interesting to me, actually. So I really enjoyed this conversation. So just out of curiosity, what happens? Is there any research on fatigue on the part of the consumer? He's getting constantly bombarded. I mean, you have assumed that he's a certain person. He may or may not be, right? But you assume that he may not like that. Plus, he's getting bombarded with this, that, and the other all the time. He may not like that also. So, assuming that this is the kind of person, is there any research on what happens with the pushback and how do you overcome it? And what it is doing in general to people's psychology, what it is doing to society, what it is doing to relationships, what it is doing to how we spend our time, or how we would like to spend our time, especially with ourselves, and not with what you are doing to us.
I think Gita and Olivier talk about this.
So I think actually that's one of the use cases, because I don't want to spend hours, looking at messages or the survey. So if I can create a tweet of myself and the tweet is going to answer on my behalf, then actually it's going to save me some time. So that's actually the tweet will never get tired actually. So that's actually one of the use cases. But definitely I think we should be mindful of the implication this could have on psychology and society. That's why we're trying to explore maybe some positive use cases where you can talk to your twin maybe as a way to self-discovery, to reflect on yourself. Maybe one day I'm feeling a bit sad and I talk to my twin to try to go back to my normal self. And again, we have some initial data suggesting that if I'm a Republican, I don't want to talk to a Democrat because I would fight after 5 minutes. But if I talk to a twin of a Democrat, I know this person is going to be polite, and I could have a conversation, and actually we have some early evidence that this can reduce polarization and actually help people take the perspective of people who are different from them. So there could be some positive use cases, but also we're seeing already some very negative kind of consequences of people using LLMs as therapists. Some of psychosis, suicidal thoughts, and so on and so forth. So we see some pretty concerning evidence of negative impact on mental health. So definitely it could go in many different directions, depending on how it's used.
Also answer your point on how people feel that they're being followed and targeted in this kind of way. There is some research that shows that some people react very negatively to that because they feel they're being stalked. But that's a segment of people. I think for other people, perhaps they don't respond the same way. Following up on your point, I have another question which is more policy related to our speakers. And this is about who owns your digital twin. So when you think about social media data, I think that's a huge issue, which is companies are profiting off our backs. So how do you see this world of digital twins and who owns your digital twin?
I think if you think about it, the ship has sailed already. I mean, Google and Meta probably know us better than we know ourselves. So I'm sure they have, while they don't talk about it, they have incredibly better, they have all the, of course, the data on us, but they have probably twins of each one of us which are going to be able to predict our next best action much better than we can. And this is the largest, it's $1 trillion industry globally. So I don't think there's anything new that we are talking about. What you will see happening actually is that, and just building on the previous question, is that there will be help coming to us from AI agents, which will be there, which can work across our inboxes. So they can filter out, they can perhaps respond to us. I think Gmail is already doing that. There was a project called OpenClaw, which had started looking into our WhatsApp and other inboxes to actually then start responding. So AI will basically, I think, help a lot. It's like the converse question is, can we afford not to let our data be taken away? Because it's already happening. So that ship has sailed.
One positive note, we have an MBA student at Columbia. We actually created a company that the whole premise is that you should own your twin. And so in my content, I'm going to create a twin of myself. This twin is going to take service. I'm going to get paid actually. I'm going to get passive income when this twin takes service on my behalf. So that's an interesting business model to actually really put the people at the center and let them actually benefit from their twins doing things on their behalf. But that's one case. It's a bit of a minority. I think most of the time people are not even really aware that their twins are being created.
Great to hear Columbia Business School student is doing that. Any other questions? Yes.
The thing that could be particularly interesting, I mean, we speak a bit about marketing, etc., is could be particularly dangerous / interesting for politics. Because I think this would be data that would be gold for knowing what policies to put forward in what particular region and what could or couldn't work. Just a thought, have you looked pivoting towards that?
So this actually started in political science. So the original, research on silicon samples actually came from political science, trying to predict, election results, policy results. One of the companies, which has reached $1 billion valuation. Actually, that's what they do. They predict elections. So they claim to have been able to predict the NYC election results within 3,000 votes. So that's one of the use cases that they do. So that's really definitely one of the prime use cases. And they can't really know.
I think another, just building on what Olivier said, you also see prediction markets nowadays, where people are putting up real money to essentially bet on various things which are happening. In effect, it's really wisdom of crowds for things that are in the stock market or other kinds of markets which are there. So I think these areas are very ripe for innovation actually. So earlier, where in the US you would have things like Gallup, etc., do surveys of 1,000 people and then predict what's happening at a national level. In India also you see that during election time. I think here the twins can be used, as you said, pre-election and even post-election, for being able to even essentially help with the policy creation and at a much more localized level than sitting in Delhi and creating things for the whole country. So, but politicians generally have a very good sense of what people are thinking, otherwise they'll be out of power.
We have time for one more question. So at the back.
Hi, my name is Anamika. So I've been in marketing for a decade now. And I used to do B2C, now I'm doing B2B, and I love being creative, and I feel like I miss it so much, like being creative. So one question I have, because I think last year one woman got viral that I want AI to do all the boring stuff, like laundry and my cooking. I don't want AI to do my marketing and creative stuff that I enjoy. So what my question is, don't you think that brand voices will become repetitive if we're using digital twins for everything? Because I love being creative. I love sitting with people and brainstorming. But if voices are becoming AI, so don't you think that's quite repetitive and the brands will just lose their uniqueness and their voice?
Yeah, so in fact, so there's been quite a bit of research on using Gen AI for creativity and creative thoughts. And one of the things that people find over and over is that you can have creative ideas with AI, but they tend to be all the same. So you get to your point, there's a lack of diversity in the ideas, and so that's one of the projects on which I'm doing research, is how to actually improve the diversity of AI-generated ideas. And actually, the Twins approach is a way to infuse more diversity in the AI, because now you can take different perspectives that are very unique and actually bring different ideas to the table. Now, at the same time, the fact that it's possible doesn't mean that we should not do it as humans. And if we enjoy creativity and the craft of creative thinking, then why outsource to AI? I mean, if that's something you enjoy doing and you want to do, and you don't have to use AI for that. You can also just keep doing it yourself. So when I say that you should replace creative thinking with AI, just exploring whether it's possible and what are some of the implications.
We have one last question.
Thank you. I think the concept of digital twins is ubiquitous. It won't be just people, it could be any physical object or an ecosystem, an airport. For the purpose of this discussion on market research and marketing, the question I have is it destined that all the data would flow through to the more central sources of Google or Meta? And is there opportunity to be productive and create value, for example, Rajesh, at your firm, and have data that's proprietary, that generates value and is deeper, rather than more broad and generic, the way they would be?
Yeah, I think so. The data that is, I think, going to be incredibly valuable is what customers do on your own properties. So if you have an app or a website, and if you have a relationship with your customers, how do you leverage what's happening? That's proprietary to you. And then can you use that customer relationship to get more what's called zero-party data? So get people to volunteer additional information and create a value exchange. If I can give more information, can I get more personalized recommendations, for example? And that data is yours alone. Everything else is really open, but that data, I think, is going to be worth its weight in gold, and which will drive, I think, the better personalization that sort of
We have to stop now. This is really fascinating conversation, and we will continue over dinner. So I hope you can all stay, and I know that Rajesh and Olivier will be here, and you'll have a chance to ask your questions. We are going to take a very short break before we reconvene here for the debate, which I think is going to be very exciting. We have a good motion and two people on either side arguing in the debate, and I'll speak more about it after the short break. But let's first give great thanks to Olivier and Rajesh. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, reset the stage, and we're going to come back in here for the debate. So we'll see you all soon. Part of the evening, we have a really exciting format. We're going to do a very rapid debate. The motion for this debate is rapid AI adoption will be a net positive for India. And we have 4 illustrious speakers with us here today. If you scan the QR code, you will get detailed bios of all the speakers. And I'm not going to do justice to them because I'm going to very briefly introduce our speakers. So let me start with our team for the motion. We have Pranay Mehrotra and Sameer Shetty. Pranay is a senior partner and managing director at Boston Consulting Group, and he's a member of BCG's Asia Pacific leadership team, and I believe helps companies with their AI strategy. Sameer is Group Executive for Digital Business and Transformation and Strategic Programs at Axis Bank, and he serves as the Group Executive for Digital Business and Transformation and Strategic Programs at the bank. It's no wonder they're both speaking for the motion. Against the motion, we have Om Bhatt and Satish Bhairavan. Om served as the chairman of the State Bank Group from July 2006 to March 2011. He currently serves as an independent director on the boards of several companies, including Tata Motors and Aadhar Housing Finance Limited. Satish is the global head data and analytics at Tata Consultancy Services, helping enterprises reimagine their data ecosystems and prepare for the future. He's a tech enthusiast, yet we have him today on the against the motion side. So I think we're going to hear some exciting debate coming from our fantastic participants today. Let me quickly introduce the format for the debate. Very soon, the audience will be asked to vote on the motion, rapid AI adoption will be a net positive for India. You will get a QR code and you will be able to vote. But let me preview what you're going to hear for the next hour or so. Each team is going to start with 6 minutes of their opening statements for the motion and against the motion. Then we have a quick round of rebuttals where each team challenges the other team, and the team that's being challenged counter-argues this rebuttal or this challenge. And then we have an open conversation that I will moderate, followed by Q&A from the audience. And finally, we get closing arguments from the against the motion team and the for the motion team. So that's going to be the setup. So let's start with the voting now. And you will be voting using your phones. We're going to have a QR code up here. And you'll be voting on the motion. Rapid AI adoption will be a net positive for India. And you are going to either vote for the motion or against the motion. And you can see here, you're going to go to menti.com and enter this code. The code is up there on top. It's 95296999. And cast your vote. And you'll be doing that again at the end of the debate. So for now, just cast your vote for the motion or against the motion.
Go to menti.com.
Menti.com. And then the number is 95296999. So you can see that we have the votes are coming in, and so far we have for the motion winning out. Give you some time, so we want to make sure that you all get a chance to vote before we get started. We're getting close. We're going neck and neck over here. Have most of you have done it? Do you need a minute? All right, has everyone had a chance? We're going to move on. So we're going to get started now with the opening statements from each team. We'll start with the team for the motion, and it's going to be 6 minutes for the opening statements, and I believe Samir and Pranay will each speak for 3 minutes and present their arguments for the motion. So let me turn it over to the team.
Hello. Hi. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for having me here. I wanted to start by talking for the motion, and my discussion is in 3 parts. Point number 1, AI is a pivotal technology. The discovery of fire, the industrial revolution, electricity, internet, AI sits in the same bucket. AI could be pivotal for India. We missed the industrial revolution and we suffered for many centuries. And AI could be the pivotal technology that takes us from being where we are today to having a real Viksit Bharat, where all 1.4 billion people are affluent and have money to spend. My second point is around benefits that it brings. I will take the example of banking, which is what I'm In banking, the use cases of AI are across all kinds of things, whether it is cost saving through, let's say, replacement of call center agents, or moving to a zero-ops setup for time. There are significant opportunities. The more interesting opportunities, though, are on the revenue side of things, which is how can we help customers save 5% of their monthly cost or get 5% better returns and make more money. These are areas where there are lots of exciting examples. I also wanted to take the kind of an analogy. If you think of the 80s or the 90s, if you wanted to send 1,000 rupees to your friend, you would have to write a check and it would take 3 days for the money to go to your friend. Today, it happens in less than 3 seconds. So banking moves a lot more money. It does significantly larger business. And at the same time, banking employs far more people than it used to do in the 80s and 90s. The last point I wanted to make was that our one natural reaction to new technology is fear. And I think there is, as you can see the results here as well, there is fear for AI. And that fear obviously has some foundation and some roots. But every time a new disruptive technology has come, the human race has found ways to make use of the productivity benefits that comes out and emerge better in a better position for everybody. If you think of the age when we moved from riding on horses to driving cars, obviously the entire ecosystem around the horses, the people who made carriages and so on and so forth, everything collapsed. But a significantly larger ecosystem emerged around the automotive industry, and that helped propel the human race significantly forward. AI is one such event in my mind. With that, I rest my case and hand over to you.
Thanks, Amit. So for me, the question is actually not whether rapid AI adoption would be net positive for India, because I believe the transformative potential of AI to be a net positive is without doubt. I think the question is what would it take to ensure it ends up being a net positive for us? And there is a set of reasons why I say that. I think when you look at India today, across sectors, there are structural constraints under which we operate. AI is a technology which will help us overcome some of these capacity gaps and capability gaps. You take healthcare as an example, right? Today, the doctor-to-patient ratio is 1:900. It's the highest across any large economy, any large demography. In China, it's about 1:400. You go to the smaller cities, you go to the rural areas, the ratio is even worse. Imagine walking into a primary health center. You want to be tested for TB, but there aren't doctors or there aren't clinical staff. How do you address that? You have AI solutions. You look at Cure.ai, spelled with a Q. As of last year, they had 20 million TB screenings. You can actually walk in, you can get an X-ray done. The AI with a very high level of accuracy will tell you, are you in the high risk zone or are you in the low risk zone? If you are in the high risk zone, you get triage to a doctor who will examine you. If you're in the low risk zone, you can have some counseling and walk out. So what that basically means is high risk patients are being looked at by doctors in a very constrained manner where there aren't enough doctors or enough clinical staff to look at patients. You look at clinical staff, a large part of their work is spent on administrative tasks. AI can actually free up about 70 to 80% of their workload so that they can actually spend time with patients. You look at education. There are 3.3 million students who study in single teacher classrooms. So there is one teacher which is teaching them all the subjects. More than 50% of students, especially in government schools, if you're above grade 5, your numerical and literacy skills are of grade 2 or grade 3. And these are the people who go on and then drop out of school. Teachers can be upskilled. Teachers can have personalized curriculum directed at fast learners and the people who are not so fast. Students can have actually curriculum which is highly personalized for them. So AI has the real potential to unlock capacity and capability gaps. You look at agriculture, which is 46% of our workforce. Our productivity is way behind the global average. Imagine a farmer which can use AI-enabled voice or chat to call in to figure out which seeds to plant, which, how do they manage their pest, how much water is required for irrigation, where should they sell and how should they sell. The Ministry of Agriculture is working on these solutions. The agri stack, which rides our digital public infrastructure, is just collating land records, soil records, and data which can be used to really transform a sector which occupies the largest part of our workforce. The last one that I would say is look at manufacturing. Our manufacturing productivity is 25% of the global average. We want that sector to use more AI. Yes, we are concerned about jobs, but do you want an Indian manufacturing employee not using AI while a Chinese or a Vietnamese worker is? And I rest my case. If India wants to be more competitive, unlocking some of our gaps, we need rapid AI adoption.
Thank you. I turn it over to the other team.
Thank you, and thanks for having us here today. See, I want to start off by saying we are not against AI, and our argument here is not going to be whether India should adopt AI or not, is it beneficial here or not, right? And that's not the question as we understood it. The topic for discussion is rapid AI adoption in India the recipe for success, right? I think the whole debate is about being rapid about it, right? And in the context of India, what does rapid mean? And what are the pitfalls that we got to avoid if India has to excel at AI adoption and be equitable at the same time, right? So what is the argument, the core argument that we are going to put together, put forward in front of you is not about whether AI is relevant or not, but whether rapid AI adoption in the context of India is relevant or not, right? So that's the key argument that we want to start off with. The first point here is, we all know AI is probabilistic, right? And the earlier panel talked about probabilistic and deterministic as well. In the context of India, we heard some of the examples from the opposing team, and a 1% error amounts to a few million people, right? It's not a rounding off error. It is, depending on what use case you are delivering to in healthcare and agriculture, that can really mean a large constituency of people, right? So the goal should not be to adopt AI with even a 1% error rate without going through all the remedies they might have to have in place for this to work in the context of India. So the argument here is, in high stakes environments, in high stakes use cases, safety by design is more important than being rapid at it, being more innovative. Yes, all of that is needed, but for scale, safety by design is necessary, right? And we know the pitfalls of some of this, right? We know how many, even using traditional AI methods, how many false negatives and false positives we see when we talk about insurance claims, right? How many people's lives it impacts on a day-to-day basis, right? Where are the safeguards? Where are the guardrails? What kind of a framework, governance framework are we going to bring in place? What kind of a human-in-the-loop system are we going to put in place to adopt this AI application or AI system at scale, right? That's the key question here. If it can't be explained, it can't be trusted, and this whole adoption cycle will depend on, scale cycle will depend on how trustworthy we make this whole system to be, right? And finally, the game is not only about rapid adoption, it is also about speed of transition, right? And in many cases, there is a lag, right? Technology evolves faster, people's learning curves are slower. How do you deal with it? Sorry, sir. I think I did that.
Thank you and a very good evening. Actually, this is getting quite interesting. I don't know which side I am now. So, it is important to understand the context. The risk is not that AI will fail spectacularly. The bigger risk is that AI overreach, where scale, incentive, and weak oversight will continue to create fragility across all the systems where AI is going to be implemented. We have enough evidence that even today, wherever AI has been implemented, it has given us not one, but several nasty surprises. Several nasty surprises. So that is one point I want to make. And again, what Satish said just now, we are not against AI. We are not against AI implementation, but we are against mindless, thoughtless implementation of AI. Hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions are being invested in AI. Some of the best global minds are working in AI. It is a real miracle, no doubt about it. It is the source of untold speed, accuracy, delivery, world. And for the first time, we have got a technology which competes with humans, indeed excels humans at many levels. Yet, just do not look in the here and now only of AI, positive. It has a dark side, and there will be consequences on the dark side. It will eliminate hundreds of millions of jobs. It will destroy families. It will disrupt societies. It will bring to an end the civilization as we know it today. 2 years, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years. Again, we are still not against AI, but we are against rapid, mindless, thoughtless implementation of AI. See, we have to be careful. If you put it in the context of India, our labor force, which is the largest in the world, barely 20% of them are in regular employment. 45% are in illegal. 16% of GDP, 45% of people, they are poorer than the poorest in Sahara. We talk about how big they are growing, cryptography, etc. But if you look at it, it's not true. We have a hugely growing gig economy. 45% of current graduates, including those from IITs, are unemployed. Rapid AI deployment is going to make it much, much worse. Okay, and India does not have a good social system. So, but there are things that we should do. There are things that we should not do. We will talk about it.
Okay, so we have time for rebuttals. So, would you like to rebut some of their points?
Yeah, just a couple of points. I don't think we are suggesting mindless, thoughtless adoption. I completely agree with what Mr. Bhatt said and what Satish said. There are just 2 points, right? Satish spoke about error rates, and I spoke about an AI solution deployed in healthcare for TB detection. That has 30% better detection rates than what was feasible before that solution was deployed. So AI, yes, and Satish is completely right. What you deploy has to be well tested. It can be very costly. But we've seen it across industry. We see it in the insurance sector. I spent time on, AI can actually help the level of efficacy of a human. And therefore, it is about human in the loop, but how do you actually augment the expertise of the human to drive better decision making? That's what we're talking about, right? So TB decision making used to take 3 weeks. It can happen literally in 1 hour with 30% better detection rates. Why wouldn't we want that solution to be rapidly adopted across all our primary healthcare centers in the rural areas? The same solution is being deployed around cancer screening. Why wouldn't we want that solution to be better deployed, right? Or be more quickly adopted? I think the other point is about agri. I spoke about it, right? Most of our farmers are small hectare farmers. They can't invest in technology. When they sell their produce, they get 30 to 35% of the final end consumer price because a lot of the value is captured by the intermediaries. Imagine having better quality data at their disposal, which can help them decide when to sell, how to sell, where to sell, which actually raises their income levels. So in our view, completely agree. You have to do the right checks and balances. It's not about mindless and thoughtless. You have to be calibrated. There are risks. The last part I would say is, but it's not about using those risks to slow adoption. It's about using those risks in how you design the way you want to roll it out. And I'm not sure it's about the pace, it's about how you actually roll it out.
Thank you. I wanted to pick on 2 other points. The first is around the risk. And the point that I want to make here is that as a country, we have actually great examples of how we manage risks in rapidly evolving technologies. And 2 specific examples I want to talk about. This first is the digital public infrastructure that we have. India has approached digital in a very different way than the rest of the world. The benefits, the economic benefits of digital infrastructure go to the people, go to all of us, and they are not because of the digital, because of UPI, Aadhaar and the likes, which are by the way in other countries private entities. And I think similar approach we need to follow in the AI space. Also, we have DPDP. We are perhaps one of the very few countries that has a fairly robust regulation around data privacy and how that is taken care of. So we need guardrails. On the speed, look, I don't think anybody can guide at what speed these technologies will get adopted. If we go back to the internet era, we had the 2000s, the boom and then the bust. But look at what that has done to the entire world 20 years down the line. And AI will go through its booms and busts. There will be some areas of fast adoption, some areas of slow adoption. But net, the impact of this is going to be positive. There is a real question around retraining of and reskilling of people. Every new technology creates new opportunities, but you have to reskill people so that they move from making carriages to making, automotive engines. And that is not obvious. That's definitely a space that India will have to invest heavily in. And that's something to watch out for. But otherwise, the adoption of AI is going to be a big net positive. The question for us is that how do we do this while managing the impact on the economy and on the society?
I'll start. I'd like to thank Pranay and Samir for arguing on our pass. So, we are all saying the same thing. The question is not whether AI is needed or not. See, the question, and I want to rebut you on a couple of specifics here. The challenge in the context of India, something as basic as biometrics in Aadhaar is facing challenges on the ground because people have calloused hands, people have age-related issues that result in fingerprints not being able to be read properly, right? So, and that's not a small constituency. That's a really large number of people who are being denied basic services. Right? So something as basic as biometric has its own challenges in implementation in India. We all consider it a success, but still there is a error rate. Right? Now, if I expand it to tuberculosis and cancer, the best of available technologies do not talk about accuracy levels beyond the 2 lines or 3 lines, right? And with the technology which has many more lines appended, we are facing issues on this. So I'm not really sure settling for something that's not very robust without the right checks and balances. Right? That's the right approach. Number 2, in the context of India again, the country is so diverse. Most of the LLM or generative AI adoption today is centered around English. How many of us are proficient? We are a country of more than a couple of dozen languages, right? How do you ascertain equitability in all of us? Right? Does a person with English knowledge fare better, or are you creating an imbalance there? How are we dealing with this? These are questions. If you are bringing it to the field of agriculture and making it a differentiator there, how do you address some of these questions? Right? So those are the 2 or 3 key considerations that I thought I should bring up. And sir,
thank you. So first, I want to make a point. I think Pranay has stolen some of my thoughts. I really want to speak on health, because clearly that is a case, where we should put in AI, radiology, remote diagnostic, homeopathy, health, it will work very well. He also stole my points on education and on agriculture. I deal with him separately But, India's strength is not in foundational AI research. Our strength lies elsewhere. So some of the things that we should not do is that we should not run after LLMs. That is something we should definitely not do. AI is capital intensive. We don't have the kind of capital that is required for running AI systems. There is an AI summit which is running in Delhi these days, and I read in the newspaper today that a very high dignitary from India said that he has invited the entire world to put their data center in Asia. Number 1, we don't have proper data privacy laws. We don't have data regulation. And number 2, I think those guys don't even know the amount of power the data centers consume. If the entire global data center were to come in India, we still don't have electricity in our houses, the entire country will be down. Now, if this is the kind of leadership, and if this is the kind of conversation that is taking place at a very prime AI summit, almost a global AI summit, and if this is the kind of conversation that is taking place in India, I'm wondering what kind of initiative would be taken in AI, what kind of implementation would take place if you are simply wanting to aim the rest of the universe. China has done this, America has done this, India should also do it. And if India does it in a way that it comes back to bite us, is that what we want? So that is one thing that I wanted to say. The other thing I want to say is that in India, there is a penchant for vanity projects. There is a penchant for hype. There is a penchant for show. So we've got smart cities, right? You know what has happened to those smart cities? Facial surveillance, this, that, and the other, right? So, it sounds good. It makes a good statement on the newspapers. But there is no cost-benefit analysis. There is no social benefit. If you look at facial recognition, all kinds of innocent people have been sent to jail. They lie there for years, and then it's found out that it was the wrong thing. Because it is rapid, mindless, and thoughtless implementation of AI, which is why this is happening. And this is happening in many other spheres also, right? Vanity project is one, but if you look, there was some conversation around finance. How many of you, I don't think there is a single person in this room who has not been invited not once but several times that a loan has been sanctioned, 1 lakh, 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, and then should avail them. How many people in the middle classes, in the lower classes who have fallen for such loans and now are, indebted or are having harassment because they are not able to pay the loan? I mean, there are stories of all kinds of people who start with the loan of 8,000, they are not able to pay, it goes up to 20,000 or 18,000, and all kinds of people come up and they do to collect that money. All because of rapid, mindless, thoughtless.
Can I turn to you now to also rebut the other side?
Sure, that's what I was doing.
Yes, you included the rebuttal and your counter argument. So if you have any other points that you would like them to.
See, maybe I use this opportunity to summarize. We are in agreement that AI is a generational shift. It is a technology for good. And again, we really want to insist that it's about anchoring it on scale. Right? The considerations that you do when you do it inside the four walls of a lab are very different from how it plays out in the real world. Right? So we want to really focus on the point that scale is important. In a country like India, scale is everything, right? And it has to work in almost every single situation. You have to have workarounds everywhere. And we want to anchor this around trust. Right? We want to say, once trust is lost, if you are not built for trust, if your systems are not designed to be scalable for trust, this is not going to go anywhere. Right? We are going to create more problems than there are in society today. Right? So that's the second point. Finally, the goal here should be about how to sequence this adoption, right? As opposed to mindless, thoughtless, rapid AI adoption. How do you sequence it? How do you put the right guardrails? How do you put the right governance structures in place? Right? That's the core conversation.
I'm really concerned about the employment in India. See, we don't have to think about corporates. We don't have to think about small isolated modules in which AI will operate. This is a very intelligent gathering. We have to think about the larger ecosystem. We have to think about society, right? We have to see, I am what I am. But in my own family, in my own neighborhood, with my own friends, I know people who don't have jobs. And I cannot help them to get jobs. And they are miserable. And there are possibly 500 million people in India who are living that kind of life. What will happen when AI is implemented? It's going to get worse. So one of the suggestions that I have is that AI should be primarily used, at least initially, where it augments, right? In research, in R&D, in innovation. And I agree with the opposition in health, in agriculture. See, in health, not only radiology and diagnostics. If you look at agriculture, we have got fragmented holding all across the country. Now there has been enough research done that these people can be helped by giving them analysis through AI tools on crop insurance, on weather, on water, on seeds, on innovation. But the challenge is that the holdings are fragmented, there are lakhs of holdings, there is not enough extension work to do that. And the policy makers are not taking the decision on that. There is an AI tool available, there are several AI tools available. But the policy decision is not there to do that. It will give at least, we've got 6 lakh villages in India. If there is enough extension work done just on this, it will give you more than 1 million jobs, just about. But that's not happening. So augment is one thing. The other thing is that who will come first, the chicken or the egg? Do we create audit capacity? We don't have audit capacity for AI running. In Amazon, if you buy something, you want to return it or if it is something wrong. I have tried it 3 times, I have not been able to get a response. There is no recourse to AI, especially when they are in the wrong. The legal system does not permit it. There is no regulation, there is no audit, there is no law, there is nothing. Should that come first? Or should AI come first? Or maybe they run in the parallel or whatever it is. But we cannot allow AI to run away with it and do this kind of damage to society. Wherever we fear that AI will do some damage, should we not have the patience to wait 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, 3 years? Should we not do that? So the question is not between slow and fast adoption of AI or AI related activity. The question is that we should have selective deployment. We should have an understanding of risk and we should sequence this as we deploy. There has been some conversation about old technology which came and how mankind delivered it. But if you remember when electricity came, when train came, when printing presses came, it took in some cases decades, in some cases more than a century before society were able to benefit from those inventions. Why are we in a hurry to create our own society? Just because China and America, somebody, I was talking during the tea break, and somebody said if all banks are going into AI, will State Bank of India also go? I said, look, if all banks are going, State Bank will also go, because but it is a question on which a decision cannot be taken by individual leaders. It is the question on which decision has to be taken collectively by society, by regulator, by government, right? If you leave it to individuals, AI implementation is going to cause havoc. It will not amok and cause havoc. But this is why we need greater wisdom from the people who run this country, from the leadership, from the regulator. And then I think there will be a right balance between the kind of AI we are implementing, the kind of AI the country needs.
Thank you. So, pass it on to you to address some of these points that have been brought up.
I think those were chosen statements.
Not yet.
Sure. So 2 points I wanted to address. First, our eminent colleagues have changed the topic of the debate from rapid AI adoption to mindless and thoughtless adoption of AI. So I think in general, sir, we should not do anything mindless and thoughtless. Forget AI. So I just want to bring us back to the topic of the day, which is rapid adoption of AI. And there, 2 points that I thought are important. First is that we have to remember that we are competing. We are part of a global order, and that global order is evolving. Whether we like it or not, we will have other folks who are implementing AI, getting benefits out of it, and that has implications for productivity gains and the share of value add that comes into our country. And we are a very poor country. We need to advance. We need to ensure that the benefits of productivity gains. A large part of the reason why India has had poverty elimination is because of productivity gains. And those productivity gains have to continue, and whatever gives us that, we have to really double down on. The second point that I want to make is, Mr. Bhatt said very eloquently on how certain individuals have made certain statements that don't seem right. And hence, we have to ensure, I think, that the decisions on AI are not taken by some guy sitting in New Delhi or in Mumbai. We have to empower our folks. We have to empower them with the technology and believe that they will do what is best for them. And my belief is that if we empower Indians are very creative, very productive, very kind of intelligent people. If you give them the right empowerment, they will figure out the best way to use those tools for their benefits. This cannot be centrally dictated. It cannot be this 5-year plan and so on and so forth. Some very interesting stat. If you go to Google and you look at India, 60% of searches are now non-English and verbal. So people are not even typing; they are speaking to Google, and they are speaking in non-English languages. And that's the empowerment that at the grassroots level that we're talking about. The per capita data usage of India today has crossed 35 GB. It is the highest by far in the world. And again, that is because we empowered, the last man with technology tools, and they're using it for their own benefits. Is there misuse? Of course, there is misuse. But the vast majority of India is using to make their lives better and to contribute positively to the country. And so, with those 2 points, I pass on to them.
Yes. We're not in prime mindless or thoughtless. The other thing I did want to highlight was that, look, rapid is a matter of definition, and what is rapid for someone might not be rapid for someone else. I think the point in my view is we shouldn't stand in the way of adoption, right? Because I genuinely believe this is a technology which actually once and for all can help us solve certain structural problems that plague us at a society level, right? It has to be done responsibly. There is no doubt about that. I think Mr. Bhatt spoke about, and Satish spoke about some of the risks on employment. We have to address that. The transition to that is critical. At a policy level, along with industry, along with academia, we have to solve this problem. But the challenge is, if you stand in the way of adoption, and if we decide what's quick or what's not quick, we actually would prevent people who truly need this technology from uplifting their lives, and they will not end up adopting it. People like us will end up adopting AI. We will not really be stopped from adopting AI. There are people who really can transform their lives from adopting AI. We want to make sure that they have the flexibility, and obviously with the right checks and balances to adopt AI. Mr. Bhatt spoke about small farmers. You speak about people in the rural areas, in the smaller cities. They really need to try it. I also have to admit, I've been a skeptic of AI, right? And I can point out one instance when somebody said this to be a college-going student, that I can't write an essay without using ChatGPT. That was a scary thought for me, right? And that's not what you want to go down. But the reality of it is those people are going to use AI whether you want it or don't want it. There is another college-going student who doesn't know how to code, but actually built an app in a few days, right? And that's innovation that's also happening in that segment of society. So responsible adoption doesn't mean slow adoption. Responsible innovation does not have to mean slow adoption. And we should not dictate what that pace of adoption is. We should put in place the right checks and balances, create those guardrails, but not stand in the way of adoption.
Thank you. So this was a lot that we heard on both sides. I'm going to just direct a question at each side before we then open it up to the audience for questions, and then we'll get the closing statements. So I think you spoke about geopolitical issues, and if China and the US are doing this, India doesn't want to be left behind. So one of the risks I think that Dario Amodeo, the CEO of Anthropic, talked about is the fact that you can have this arms race, like we had the nuclear arms race, you can have biological weapons and other things that are in the wrong hands. And so he said we need a process of what he called entente, not détente, where you actually have democratic countries kind of monopolizing AI and making sure it doesn't get into hands of rogue nations and so on. Is this, in your view, something that's sustainable, or is this something that is really a high-risk factor that the world, and not just India, needs to consider before we move into adoption of AI?
Right. So great analogies, nuclear technology. Perhaps far more tougher to get hands to versus AI. But then the technology, the technology is the technology. Whether we use it for the right purposes or the wrong purposes is what makes the difference. You can use nuclear technology to make bombs, you can use it to generate power. And the same is the case with AI. The technology is already there. There is, I think this question of whether the technology can be restricted or not is behind us. It's no longer with us today because the technology exists. The real question is how do we use it in the right way to have right impact for everybody. Can countries come together and do, kind of stop, etc.? I am not sure. I I think people will have access to AI, much like many countries who do not have access to nuclear power will have access to that technology. I think for Indians, the question is how do we use AI to really empower all 1.4 billion citizens of ours and uplift their insights.
I have a question for you as well. So on the flip side, again, the same set of essays from the CEO of Anthropic, he talks about this utopian world where there is no longer any chronic disease and where you can cure cancers and Alzheimer's and so on by leveraging AI. And do you fear that if you don't start this rapid adoption and innovation using AI, the world will suffer as a result and not enter this world of innovation in drugs and chronic disease prevention and so on?
We are talking at the huge scale. We talk about diseases like cancer now, 1 year, 10 years, 5 years is related. But by rapid deployment, if you are going to do the kind of habit which we were discussing about, then no. Sensible and thoughtful deployment, then yes. And not only in the case of diseases like cancer, etc., there are many other places where AI is used.
Things. Audible? Yeah. You mentioned earlier that we've got 22 recognized languages, we've got maybe another 200 or 2,000 more languages. India could be the first country in the world to bring a multilingual AI system, right? When you go to villages, it should be possible to have an AI app that no matter in what language the villager is talking, no matter what language the researcher is comfortable with, they're able to converse with each other, right? We have done real magic with Aadhaar and UPI, right? The scale is world class, right? We should be able to export this implementation technology globally. We should be able to do this in other places, other digital data infrastructure. Those are some of the things that we should start with and reach some kind of scale, reach some kind of education, reach some kind of enablement, build up our accounting system, build up our legal system, build up our police system, build up our bureaucracy system, and then go ahead with the implementation of AI at other places.
So I'll open it up to the audience for questions. We can take a few questions. Yeah, at the back.
Hi, this was a great debate. Am I audible? Yeah, I'm Aravind from Chennai. I flew in just for this event. So I'll just take a couple of minutes. I've taken down some notes. Don't mind if I look at my phone. So I completely agree with what Mr. Bhatt and Mr. Bhairavan spoke about. I think it's not about AI adoption, it's about rapid AI adoption. I believe that rapid AI adoption will not be a net positive for India or for the world in general. So I have 3 questions for that. So today technology is a cost of doing business. I currently work in Citibank in technology risk management for consumer banking. So in finance, we have a lot of legacy applications. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Shetty. So we still use Windows 2012 for our applications. So AI it's a very new technology. So if we are going to rapidly adopt AI, it's like putting a Ferrari engine in a Maruti 800. Are we ready for this? Because our technology, our systems are old, legacy. And every single day I deal with hundreds of vulnerabilities, technology risks. Are we ready for that? Second, what about the environmental considerations for running AI systems? Currently AI systems, LLMs use a lot of energy. Are we ready for that? And third question, how much can we trust the AI output? Who's going to be held accountable if something goes wrong? Example, in healthcare. Who are we going to point fingers at? Do we have the necessary laws and policies in place, contingency plans? So yeah.
Thank you.
So can I do it to the comments?
I think
3 questions for you.
Yeah, I think he's spoken like a true risk guy. So it reminded me of my life. But look, I think by assuming that as a country we will do disservice to a new technology or that we cannot adopt things fast, I think we are doing disservice to ourselves. If the same question had been asked of London military when he was launching Aadhaar. Very easy to ask, right? At that point in time, we were not even that technologically advanced. We would not have what we have today. Or if the same question were asked of this isolated gang when they started UPI or FTCI, we would not have today what we have. And by the way, either of this was not imaginable when it started. Right? When UPI came out, people scoffed at it. Including by the way banks. And I'm saying this as a banker. We scoffed at it. We said, what is this? But look at what it has done to the country today. So I think for us to kind of say that some new technology or some new benefit that could create positive effects for individuals, we shouldn't do because of certain things that institutions can't manage, like this, etc. I think it's a little quote-unquote easy. We have to have the right guardrails, obviously. So the guys who have to create the guardrails better go and create those guardrails. We have to reskill people. So the people who are responsible for reskilling better go and spend some hours and reskill the people. So I think that approach will, in my mind, give us better outcomes versus saying that let's not adopt some great positive because there is some tail risk and that will create issues.
Sorry, I just want to mention, I think Mr. Bhatt spoke about this, which is very important for a country like India. This is not about replacing the human, it's actually about augmenting expertise, right? So you look at insurance, for example, right? There is 10,000 crores of claims in health insurance, about half of that is fraud. When we deployed it and we've seen companies deploying AI-driven claims on their business model, it is actually helping them reduce frauds. It's augmenting the expertise of the medical processor to be able to actually deal with complex cases a lot better. So it's not about replacing the human, it's actually about augmenting expertise. It's about reducing waste. It's about making sure that the human time is spent on the right stuff where they should be adding value, and AI is actually enabling them to do that, right? So in a country like India, I not for a moment would suggest replacing the human. But can it really augment expertise? The answer is it's a transformation technology that can dramatically augment expertise. And when it augments expertise, it's one of those technologies where you can deliver better customer experience at lower cost. So you can deliver better outcomes at lower cost. And why wouldn't you want that technology to be adopted in India? Obviously, responsibly, not in an irresponsible manner.
Take a question for the other side now.
So, very interesting discussion on both sides, great points. My question is, I find governments all over the world misusing AI. And as an individual, I am powerless there. So I don't want them to become stronger. So if that is the case, then there's case for no AI. Even though, because it depends who can enforce it. As an individual, I can't. But governments are using it for their self-interest, not for the people. Thank you. In China, they are using face recognition for capturing people. Our government is using it for capturing data and misusing it. America elections. So that's what I meant by government is misusing it.
So what's the question?
So the question is, how can an individual safeguard themselves from misuse by government of AI against them?
So I think the previous panel spoke about it. That process already left. We are voluntarily surrendering all the data to not just governments, to all kinds of third parties. Right? So, I believe it is way too late in the game for us to be worried about data protection at an individual level. Right? And having said that, not having AI is not an option either. Because whether we consume it or somebody else does it on our behalf is the only question here. And what is the right sequence of implementation is the question. Right? Not adopting AI is not a choice. I don't think.
Your question is less around AI, it is more around ethics, it is more around leadership, it is more around values, it is more about what kind of society we want to have, right? And unfortunately, world over today, there is such a huge shift to the right, that is the right word, right? That all over the world, we are having issues with authoritarian leadership, right? We are having, imagine the kind of things that are happening in the US today. I mean, 5 years ago, we would all not be able to even talk about some of those things. Today it is there in all the papers. Today, many of the leaderships across the world have given license to its citizens to bring out their worst impulses, out on face. You can abuse someone, you can criticize someone, you can fight with someone, and you will be called a hero. So the question is not about AI. AI is a tool. It can do a lot of good. Unfortunately, in the instances that we have described, it is doing a lot of evil. So this change, if it will come at all, it will come very slowly. It will come only through enlightened leadership. It can, and we don't see much of it, but there might be some kind of change of hearts, change in the value system, because when there is too much evil, there is always a reaction to that, right? Whether that will happen in our lifetimes or not, that's a moot question. But there is no other answer to this.
So my question was more on the side of net and positive. So as you mentioned, whenever a new technology has come into play, I definitely agree it has to be taken up. It is a competitive world, I completely agree with that. But if I look at income inequality in India, whenever new technology has come up, it hasn't gone down, it has only come up. And since say around 1990s, it's only been increasing. So my fear or rather thought is that even when, if I'm thinking about net positive, when rapid AI comes into play, the skewness will increase further. And how do I get the conviction that this rapid AI adoption is not going to add to the skewness? Because the firms or the technologies or rather the enterprises which are using AI, they keep on increasing and the valuations keep going up and up, and there's a skewness on that the other side, but the person who's a layman down probably is not able to use their telephones to a great extent, or at the maximum they're using it for their homeworks. So how do I try to bridge the gap between the two and make the rapid and the net stick together for India, who wants to develop fast and take this technology?
So let me offer one thought, and then I'm sure that everyone else will have a set of probably more useful thoughts. I think that India has one advantage with what they've created with the digital public infrastructure, which can help you democratize this technology at speed which other countries can't, right? So what that effectively means is that you can actually, and Satish and the others who live in the technology world can offer you a much better perspective, but if you look at the application layer and if you can integrate it into a DPI infrastructure, you can actually make sure that people have a large swath of population has access to the set of applications that we're talking about, right? Which will mean that people even less privileged can actually access AI in a much easier manner than what other countries would. When China was driving AI adoption, a lot of that adoption was getting concentrated in the larger cities. India truly, because they don't have the kind of public architecture that we do have, the digital public architecture. We have that as a result of which if you nudge people, if you guide people, when the application layer gets integrated into that, you have a situation where people who are sitting on that architecture can actually use a set of AI-driven applications to improve their lives. So actually, if you do it in the right manner, this can actually reduce inequality than raising inequality. You can't stand in the way of capitalism. So there are some people who will create more wealth, and a handful of them. But if you look at as out of the 1.4 billion, we actually have the potential to reduce inequality if we do it in the right manner, in a responsible manner. Because you've created an architecture which, if you're right, it truly can help you do it in a much more democratic manner than otherwise.
It's a great point. I'll just illustrate this. Just if you use your debit card, Visa or MasterCard, and you make a payment, you as a consumer pay 35 basis points on that transaction. So if you spend 100 rupees, 35 paisa goes to your pocket. If you use UPI, how much do you pay? Zero. Axis Bank is for it. And this, in the first case, the 35 paisa went to a private entity, and that entity is making profit. There are shareholders of that entity who are few in number, and they are kind of making profit out of a transaction. In the case of UPI, that 35 basis point actually went back to your pocket, or it went to the merchant's pocket. Right? There's a company called Plaid in the US. It was basically what it did is, if you want to share your bank account with JP Morgan, with let's say Bank of America, for the purpose of taking a loan, they will get the data from JP Morgan and send it to Bank of America. This company, I think, was sold at $12 billion. It finally didn't go through because of some SEC, etc. But commercially, it was sold for $12 billion. In India, we have this concept of the account aggregators. Right? You put all account aggregators together, their total value will not even be 1,000 of this. Because again, there are open standards, there are regulations. There is not so much that these guys can charge on top of they can't do the rent scheme. The problem with having private infrastructure is that it creates incentives for seeking rent. So you charge far more than what your costs are. But when you have public infrastructure, then the costs come down dramatically. Public infrastructure has their own other challenges, but the costs come down dramatically. And the costs get passed, the benefits get passed on to the consumers. If you can bring that kind of approach to AI, then it can address the income inequality in large measures. There will obviously, capitalism will always work, there will always be guys who will, but then it is not supernormal profits, right? Then it is, you don't have like, trillionaires. You have some people who make maybe triple million. This is fine for your money.
Your question was not about AI. Your question is not around AI. Your question.
What around AI? It was more on the net side.
Ideally, the governments and the leadership should try to create the kind of society which society wants, right? But that is not happening. It is not given that there will be inequality, but it is the way regulation and law has been written that it is creating inequality. Law and regulation can also be written in a way that this inequality can be reduced. It is not happening. Right? So today, the measure of economic progress is GDP. And I said just a little while ago that in India, the average per capita income of most Indians is less than that of sub-Saharan Africa. Right? So clearly our leadership is not having the right policies. Clearly leadership across the world is not having the right policies. We don't decide how many hospital beds should be there, how many public buses should be there, how much food people should have, what kind of schooling is there, and then have policy implementation to meet that. We have policy implementation only to meet GDP numbers. So we will always have inequality.
So we have time for one last question. From there, I think you have the mic.
No, I think it's just a comment saying that, see, whether we like it or not, AI is here already. I think even if India today is slightly lagging behind some of the work internationally, it's going to come. And it's going to come faster than what we think actually. And I think our own experience, and this has been spoken in terms of what's happened when mobile phones came and the prices dropped, adoption increased, when data rates dropped, people benefited. Ultimately, I think when people talk of loss of jobs, I think we should think about the 70-80% who are actually in the villages, and the entrepreneurship. India doesn't create jobs through organized sector. India is more mom and pop economy where I think people are entrepreneurs actually. And I think to the extent that it can benefit the mom and pop culture in terms of enabling productivity and earning power, I think that is what we should encourage. And I think we should also recognize that there will be challenges and there will be people who will be impacted. We talked of AI augmenting humans. I think what we need as protection is humans augmenting AI, which may actually have to start, for instance, from education. Today, for instance, Indian education is by rote actually. Liberal arts. No, I think we need that. I think we need people who can think broader. Newer, I think, there was an article the other day in the papers which talked about AI actually being great in terms of letting our children do what they want actually. Creative economy as an example actually. So I think these newer opportunities will definitely emerge, for instance, actually. Policy will also evolve. Policy will evolve. I think, but overall, is it going to be 2 steps backward and 1 step forward? My personal view is that it will always be 2 steps forward and 1 step backward. And overall, I think it will take the country forward is what I think.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to actually call on the two sides. If you want to just make 3 top line points to just close out your arguments, we will start with the against side first. If you just want to take Yeah, I'm sorry. I think we need to move on, but you can ask the question later. So, would you like to give a closing argument? Like just the top line points, because we've had a lot of conversation already.
Yeah, so design for scale, design for trust, and design for sustainability. Right? That will be my top 3 points. Again, as I said, AI is not going to go away. AI is here to stay. It's a force for good. But design it properly, design it for scale, design it for sustainability. I think that should be fun.
AI decisions, people should have the last say. And there should be recourse to the principles, which the course is not available.
I think number one, AI is here. We have to figure out how we use AI to empower the normal citizen versus create profits for mega corporations. Number two, I think both my colleagues are great debaters because on a topic where they had no hope of being their government take right. So I would like to cooperate with them.
Yeah, so actually I agree with what Satish and Mr. Bhatt just said in the closing statements, right? So I have to agree. I also have to say that look, it's a great opportunity to have this conversation because there's a hype around AI. I think we need to challenge that hype. This conversation puts some of the real issues on the table, though we just had 60 minutes around it. It's, as I said, I've been a skeptic around it. It's forced me to acknowledge some of the ground realities that AI is going to get adopted, whether I have concerns around it or not. I can't dictate the pace of adoption. It's also helped me acknowledge that it truly can be transformative in the Indian context. I truly believe that, right? We have a real opportunity to address some of the gaps which are plaguing us as a society and a country. We have to do it responsibly. And that's why it's incumbent on policymakers and people like us sitting in this room who are more privileged than a lot of other Indians to actually ensure that we put the right discourse, the right points on the table. But we can't slow down its adoption in my humble. We really can't slow down its adoption. And we should not slow down its adoption. I would once again say being responsible doesn't mean being slow. That's the only last one I would say.
No, completely. In fact, we are agreeing on both things that we are disagreeing. See, I'll just say one thing. Why we have been saying that we want AI adoption, but we want to be careful about it. I didn't want to say it during the discussion, but since we are almost agreeing on everything, we all know that today there are people who go to AI for psychological counseling. They don't want to go to a counselor because they're shy or because they don't have money. They go there. And AI gives them what they want. Actually, it makes it worse. There are people who go to AI for religion, right? About spirituality, right? Christians do, Hindus do, Buddhists do. What kind of religious nonsense would they be getting from AI, right? There are people, and it is increasingly in large numbers, this is there in all kinds of media, who are making friends with AI, who are having romance with AI, who fall in love with AI, right? What kind of weirdos are there? What kind of society are we creating? Because there are no guardrails, there is no protection, there is no regulation, there is no accountability, there is no law. All these guys, whether it is Google, Meta, all these guys, Ultimate, all these guys. See, they are doing it with a passion. Maybe they do not realize the damage that is being done. Maybe they feel that the damage which is done is so small and the good that is being done is so big. But it is our family, it is our children, it is our neighbors who are becoming victims to this kind of AI. Can we close our eyes to this? Is this not happening in India? Is this not happening in Bombay? Do you not know somebody who has become a victim to AI? All of you know one or more people like that. Do you think that still we would like to go ahead with AI mindlessly? Thoughtlessly? I mean, these are real questions. And as Satish said earlier, it doesn't matter if it is 1% or 0.1%. It is still lakhs of people. It is still real people. It is still our children, our family, our neighbors, our relatives, our colleagues, our friends. How do we know that? So again, we are not against AI adoption. The thing is that neither the government nor the regulator is putting emphasis on regulation, putting emphasis on law, putting emphasis on data privacy. See, Australia has made a law that if you are certain below age, you cannot access social media. Very simple. Why can't we do it in AI today? They are not doing it. So that is the concern, the solution I have. That we know AI can do a lot of great things and will do. At the moment, it's doing a lot of lousy things.
So on that note, I think we're ready for a vote. I think both sides have had their chance to convince you about rapid adoption of AI being a net positive for India. So please open a new browser window and go to menti.com again and enter the code 95901651. And cast your vote based on what you heard, and we will look at what were the votes for versus against before, and look at the votes after as well to see if the numbers have changed. Okay. Has everyone had a chance to vote? Alright, so we are going to look at the numbers before versus after to declare a winner. So Josh, would you like to share? You can stand up.
Still changing.
Still changing, okay. Okay, has anyone still doing it, or you're all done with the vote? Okay, so we're going to announce the votes before versus after.
Okay, so before for the motion was 40, now it's 36. Before against the motion was 33, now it is 41.
Okay, so against the motion. I would really like to thank the speakers because they have been very sporting about this and really taken this to make really good arguments. Obviously, everyone has arguments on both sides, but they've taken their roles very seriously and made fantastic arguments today. So I'd like to thank them. And we also have some gifts for everyone and also some special gifts for the winners of the debate. We'd also like to invite Rajesh and Olivier to the stage as well, so we can thank everyone and give them gifts on behalf of Columbia Business School.